How's it going, film nerds? My name is Ryan Walsh. Bird Box was definitely an interesting horror film to say the least, and the whole time I was watching the movie, I really couldn't stop thinking about what if this happened in real life? How could someone go through and actually survive the Bird Box apocalypse? Well, today we're going to be breaking it down and putting together a complete survival guide for the Bird Box movie. Now, in order to make this entire Bird Box apocalypse survival guide, we have to first understand exactly who the monster is within the movie and what they actually can do. And I know a lot of you guys are probably going to say right now, well, we didn't really get to see anything of the monster within the movie. And even though we didn't get a clear indication to what this entire monster was, we did get a lot of information about what this monster can actually do. And the bare bones of it was really just not to look up at the sky or look directly at it, or else you'll literally get mind controlled into committing suicide. And that's generally the basics of what the monster could do. Because the monster was either supposed to be some sort of dark fog or a dark cloud. We don't really know. It doesn't go into that much detail. So it's definitely safe to say if you don't look up at the sky, you're all good. Also, occasionally the monster used the voices of specific people's friends and family to trick them into taking off their blindfold or just opening up their eyes and looking at it so they would commit suicide as well. But that's not the only threat within the movie, because some people became corrupt when looking at the monster instead of committing suicide. These people would go around individually or even in groups and try to get as many people to look at the monster as they possibly could. And these people weren't just like some mindless zombies. They were able to pick up weapons and shoot people, but mainly their objective was really just to get people to look at the monster so they would commit suicide. So there's definitely a lot of things to look out for, but now that we know a little bit about the monster itself, we can move on to the survival guide. And I broke it up into 4 different rules on how to survive within the Bird Box apocalypse. And I will say I'm not going to go over anything obvious like closing your eyes, because the movie did a great job in really just explaining that on its own. But moving on to rule number 1. Have someone in your group like Douglas. There are so many memes online literally saying this, and I personally think this is probably the biggest rule. Number 1, you have to have someone like Douglas. And yes, I know, we all know that Douglas was a dick throughout the entire movie, but the thing is, Douglas was always right. I mean, not always. There was probably one time where he was wrong, but most of the time, Douglas is right. If everyone just listened to Douglas, they would have been fine. And the dude was always armed. He always had a shotgun on him for the entire movie. If something was going down, he literally was the guy with the shotgun. So he knew exactly what he was doing, and everybody else was unarmed throughout the entire movie. So he was the only one that was, one, armed with a weapon, but also he had the smarts to say, don't open up the door. Don't let anybody into the house, because everyone in the house was letting all of the strangers in and not even looking at them or looking at their eyes, making sure they were all clean. They were just letting them in the door, and it didn't really matter. And this actually ties into my number 2 as well, which is basically don't let anybody within the house or just where you're staying, because what happens, you get someone like Gary and he completely kills everybody within the house. And he was one of those corrupt people I was talking about at the beginning of the video. Now, a lot of you may be thinking to yourselves, well, they let Olympia into the house and she didn't cause any trouble, but that's exactly where you are wrong. Yes, Olympia was fine when she first got to the house, but the thing is, Olympia is the one who actually killed everybody, because when Gary came knocking on the door, she was the first one to go and open up the door and let him right in so he can kill everybody within the house. So if the group never let Olympia in the house, then Gary would have never been able to come in the house, because they would have been like, okay, we rejected this one person, let's reject another one and just keep going on this streak. But on to rule number 3, which is live in a grocery store. Once again, Douglas is right in telling everybody, hey, we should just live in the grocery store, and guess what? We have food for weeks and we don't have to worry about starving to death. Obviously, the house that everyone was in didn't have enough food, so they had to go out and risk their lives in order to actually get food for everybody and make sure everyone was fed. But honestly, when watching this the first time, I wasn't against them going out and risking their lives to go and get some food from the grocery store. I was against them actually going back to the house, because I thought that was a huge mistake. At least going back and staying there permanently. Because once again, you're just going to run into the same exact problem where you're going to run out of food and you need food to live. So why don't you just live in the grocery store, have most of the group stay there, and then say 2 people can go back in the car, go get the rest of the group at the house, bring them on back, and there you go, problem solved. You don't have to leave anyone else behind, you're all good. It's a way better idea than going back and forth between grocery stores, because then you'd just be risking your lives way more times than you would be just staying in one place. But at rule number 4, don't fall in love and don't have any kids. Now, I think one of the biggest cliches for any horror or apocalyptic movie is to really just have the cliche of having love or kids involved in the story somehow. And most of the time, this is really just due to making the main characters likable, or the movie now has an excuse for the people within it to make really dumb decisions. I will say that within the movie, the romance between Mallory and Tom wasn't made to make either character dumb or anything like that. They actually did it really well. And it's not like any other horror movie where they have one of the characters just act emotional and then die and really just kill off a character. They didn't do that within this movie, and I'm actually really happy that they didn't. But of course, when we move over to the kids within a movie, that's where the problems really lie. And I think it's definitely safe to say that the argument here is that, well, Mallory couldn't have done anything about it because she was already going to have the kids before the apocalypse even started. And you're totally right, I agree with that. But I'm saying that if a person was on their own and this person wasn't pregnant, we're just starting off fresh, a regular person, don't have kids. That's the number one thing. If you don't get knocked up, you're all good. Because holy crap, the kids in this movie did some of the dumbest things possible. And of course, that's to be expected because that's that kids cliche within a horror movie where they never stay put no matter how much the parent tells them to. They just never stay put in one spot. Instead, they decide to go roaming around because they hear something. And that's exactly what Girl decided to do in this movie. But I have to say, if you follow every single one of these rules, you will definitely survive the apocalypse and survive the Bird Box movie. But of course, if you enjoyed this movie theory and you guys want more, definitely check out this video right over here. Or consider subscribing and turning on the notification bell because I do weekly pop culture, movie, and TV theories. But of course, thank you all very much for watching and embrace your inner film nerd. Bye-bye.